Hello everyone, I'm Samantha Jane Smith.
And I'm Jacob Keynes, and you are listening to the Classical Queer Podcast. Join us as we listen to queer classical music from around the world, talk with composers, and explore the wonderful, diverse, and growing repertoire of LGBTQ musicians.
On today's show, Jacob interviews the multi-talented and award-winning musician and composer, Gene Knific. Gene not only writes classical music but jazz, and he's even a member of a rock band, and he's also worked with the best in the business. It's not only composition, Gene has played all over the world, both in his jazz trio and with the band Iverson. If that wasn't enough, they also teach at the Voice Lab in Chicago, a music and speech studio dedicated to serving the queer community. Sometimes I feel so inadequate. Here's Jacob.
So we're here with Gene Knific, who is very graciously joining us for the Classical Queer Podcast. And Gene, you're in Chicago currently, yes?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, so Gene and I met about a year and a half ago doing a written version for the Classical Queer blog. And I think we actually met through Spectral Quartet, which we're going to listen to later.
Yeah.
But at this point, I've talked to, Maeve from the Spectral Quartet, and also Alex Temple, who composed something as well for Spectral. So yeah. I kind of get lost in the loops of where I meet people at this point. But
no, that's all accurate.
Good.
It's all good.
Good for my memory to remember. So we met about a year and a half ago, but it's nice to be able to chat again and catch up and see what you've been up to in the last while, and actually get a chance to listen to your music this time rather than just kind of talking in abstract.
Yeah, because it was the premiere of that piece that I think be listening to in a bit. So I had at that point, I don't know if it even had maybe one run through of it or something like that. It was very early on. So yeah, I know a lot more about it now.
Well, it'll be nice to actually listen to and hear. It'll be good, but. Maybe a little short bio about your kind of life and where you compose from and play from, and catch our listeners up a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So let's see. So you mentioned I live in Chicago. I've been here about 6 years now. I come from performer background. I'm a pianist, a jazz pianist. Studied some classical music. Got really interested in chamber music in college, and just kind of went off the deep end and just fell in love with just string writing in general. So that's kind of been at the center of being a composer of that hat is and an arranger is I write almost not exclusively but large part of my writing is for strings. So let's see other things about me. So yeah, I'm a little all over the place. I kind of hesitate to call myself anything when I'm a composer. I'm to put air quotes around that, because I was but I'm also an arranger. I'm also a performer, and also work in a lot of different genres of music. So I've spread thin, but it's been really nice to my brain is all over the place, and it's been nice to kind of match that all over the placeness with an interest in the career. So I work so a little bit more condensed. I work as a composer, I work as an arranger on various projects. I do chamber music, orchestral music writing, work as a gigging pianist, teach, and play in a synth pop band. That's probably the most concise way I can say things.
That's pretty concise. That's if we what's the elevator speech version of bio is always hard to do for sure.
For sure, yeah.
Well, and especially since you and I feel like we have like similar mentalities into working in the arts, but you work in so many different places. It is hard to kind of narrow it down to what it is you do sometimes. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, I think it's been really helpful, in a lot of sometimes I think about how it'd be really great to be known for doing one thing and get a lot of work doing that and get really good at it. But also I think I'm a lot happier this way. And I think it I don't know, the 21st century model for a career in music, I think it requires a lot of, a wide scope of skills.
Oh, absolutely. I tell this all the time to the undergrad students I teach that, like, for better or worse, whether it's positive or negative, like, gone are the days where you, as a flautist are going to get 1 degree and then go audition for some orchestra and then work for that orchestra for the rest of your life. That doesn't exist anymore.
No,
like, there's
it's not a thing.
I don't know, 5 jobs that do that. Like,
yeah. That's great.
No
I'm
way.
like so pumped for the people who get those jobs, but then there's 10,000 other people behind them not having those jobs.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe sad to watch the 9,500 people who don't have those jobs who are sad and struggle with that, and then the other like 500 who've kind of figured out like, yeah, maybe they don't have that job, but if you play in this band and can also play piano and like do this, and then you play flute on the side and you play in a reggae band, and then you I don't know, do a bunch of theater work. It's totally possible. But
for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That's what it is nowadays. But you do a million things, which I always love because, again, that's how I function. So I'm biased. But
amazing.
But it's good to hear that you're still doing all those things. That's great.
yeah, absolutely. It's it's been an interesting for the entire planet last year and a half, but largely a lot of the same wheels have been turning. I think last time I talked about working a bit at Abbey Road Studios, still work with that composer and band leader Carl Baldessar. We did a large staged production of all of those works where I played keyboards in his band, and all of the Abbey Road stuff was in the tracks behind us, big Jumbotron video screen in the background, all that kind of thing. So that's still going. Probably talked a little bit about teaching at the Voice Lab, which is largely a trans voice studio, but also music studio. Still doing that online, and still doing some arranging elsewhere, and have some commissions in random places.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I remember after we talked last time, going to read more about the Voice Lab, and it's such a wonderful place that obviously should exist in every city. It would be so nice if every place had a Voice Lab equivalent to,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really sorely needed, and I think it's this kind of thing is popping off, will be popping off. Everything with kind of looping it into kind of like trans healthcare in general. There's just such a severe need. Realistically, there's a boom in young queer people and trans people, and just going through the experience of trying to deal with the healthcare system in the States. And I know it's literally everywhere has problems with it, no matter what the system is. It's atrocious, and everybody's suffering. So people need help in this.
Yeah, it is. It's atrocious here too. I think obviously we have a very different healthcare system in Canada, but it's not that it's better. It's just very, very different in many ways.
Right.
And I think we see all the time that there are people struggling so much with how to navigate it and how to have this major thing go on in your life with very, very little support. It's such a crazy thing to watch people try and do. And so the more things that can exist, like the Voice Lab, they're phenomenal. That's amazing that we can provide any support. It's great.
Absolutely. And I'm yeah, I'm just that needs to be there as a resource, and just, I mean, hopefully too, just kind of like trans people running, businesses like this, and being more in charge of this kind of care. So it's less of like trans people asking cis people for help, but just, it being, provided because it needs to be provided. And it's, you know, by people who've also needed it, So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to hear you're still working with them as well. So that's good. We have a few things to listen to. So we are going to start with the septet.
Cool.
But maybe before we listen, give us a little rundown on its instrumentation, because it's maybe kind of an interesting instrumentation. From like
absolutely.
What you would textbook see as a septet, I suppose. Maybe like instrumentation and kind of inspirations, like where it kind of comes from.
Absolutely. So instrumentation, string quartet, and jazz trio rhythm section. So violin 1-2, viola, cello, piano, bass, double bass, drums, and the bass player is largely a jazz bass player. I'm pretty sure has some classical training, but I was really interested at the time and years before, kind of merging these backgrounds of classical and jazz, and I had written a lot for a lot of chamber music and a lot of, for my own jazz groups, and just trying to find intersections in the, those two different styles of like chamber playing. Because, jazz trio playing, although it might be felt differently and there are different aspects of it, there's a ton of crossover in it being, literally just chamber music. And so finding the connections, I noticed, I think, a lot of like older models of crossover music, combining jazz and classical music. It's like kind of one group gets pulled into the other. So, there's albums of jazz groups with a string quartet, and the string quartets are playing solis, like saxophone lines and things like that are like, it's a cool experiment, but it's idiomatically like not string writing almost, so I'd use that very loosely, not string writing. I'm not a purist in any sense. And then vice versa, with there's like a Milton Babbitt piece where it's a big band, but it's like just all over the place, matrices and whatnot, but and it just doesn't sound like jazz at all,
Milton Babbitt things.
So and those are older models, and so newer model, and other people are doing this as well, but basically just trying to have both the groups connect, so the string quartet improvising, but in more like tactile ways and more prescribed ways, as opposed to like, here's a set of chord changes. And then, pushing the jazz musicians to play a lot of through composed things that have elements of chamber music, like locking up, in ways that do exist in jazz, but not as heavily as in basically like your canon string quartet writing. So that's the inspiration.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to it. I think there were so many things that caught me off guard, like delightfully so, but like so many things that caught me off guard with, like lining up, like, the piano and the string line, like all of a sudden like locks in, like that's such a neat thing to have happen. But amidst kind of I don't know what terms you want to like call it, but like the polytonal or like posttonal, like there's some moments of just like pure free tonality, and then that kind of like lock back in, and it's a wonderful like blending and a mishmashing of things. I think one of the things I guess tried to avoid is like, while I'm looking at the skill sets of the musicians and what they do and line up, the stylistically, I guess, like harmony wise and texture wise, that doesn't necessarily need to
be any kind of prescribed like of this canon of this, whatever it is. That can just kind of be whatever comes to mind, and just keeping the functionality in the back of my head is like just something necessary, for it to work well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also am looking at what I kind of like. I tend to do like word scatter plots when I'm like listening to things for podcast. I just like write down things that pop in, and I wrote down Hiromi or Hura because it reminds me of so many like her bass lines that line up with the piano line, and then the drum like connect, like that struck through to me.
I mean, that is such a early 2000s. Just there was so much low piano with like jazz pits, bass. That's just like a sound. Like there's so many jazz trios that, including hers, that just dug into that. Bad Plus was a big one. It's this Ashbourne Svensson trio, which is a great Swedish jazz trio that existed around the time. There was this kind of like boom of groups that was super influential because I was like a teenager when they were doing their thing. That was like the modern jazz like sound. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that sneaks in there for sure.
Yeah, well, and I think we're probably roughly the same age, and I was also listening to a lot of the
sure, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But it worked so nicely. But I think I also wrote down that there's an urgent liveliness to it. It sounds so like fun and upbeat and like positive, but it's so like tense in the same way. Like I kind of loved that awesome. Weird dichotomy.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a fun thing to play around with. There's a lot of kind of just general juxtaposition there, as that's just was in the spirit of it. So yeah.
So we're gonna listen to it,
right.
And then I have a couple questions about like how you actually ended up writing it. But here is the is it just called Septet? Is that
just called
its
Septet?
Full title?
Super boring. Yep.
Septet. So we just had to listen to Septet. Where did you record this? Where was this?
This was recorded at Ravinia Park for a festival up there, which is a little bit north of Chicago. Really beautiful area. Yeah.
And are these people that you've worked with a bunch, or this is kind of like a recording session, studio musician group?
This was specifically for a program called Bridges, which was applied for a program, and it was specifically for jazz composers. I think it was kind of geared towards people to like get a chance to write for strings, and so they brought in people, really great musicians who all had some kind of connection to Ravinia, because it's also like a summer program, like a chamber music program and jazz program. So they brought back alumni to play the piece. So the Avalon String Quartet is the name of the string group, and then various players in the jazz group. Yeah.
Cool. Good. Well, the next one we're going to listen to is actually a piece by your not classical group, Iverson.
Yeah.
And so we're going to listen to the Void Within. And maybe, because I've heard you talk about Iverson a little bit, and I've listened to a fair amount of it at this point.
Awesome.
Even just a year ago, I suppose. But maybe explain what Iverson is and how you kind of got involved with that band.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think kind of tying into the queerness of this podcast, I think it's very relevant. So essentially, I just moved to Chicago and was in a period where I had very little work and had lots of free time, and reconnected with an old friend who we met at like jazz camp in high school. He's just been moving back from Nashville, and a bunch of his friends were moving back from Boston, and basically we came together and formed this group, and it was really a lot of fun. We were able to rehearse because all of us were just like freshly out of university. Like we were rehearsing like 8 hours a week or something like that, just kind of in like creative sense, figuring out how to use synthesizers, because a lot of us had just like a jazz piano background, and it was all led by mad scientist Charles Iverson, who's the lead singer and writes the songs that we kind of co-opt and arrange. It was amazing and like really eye-opening. The other people in the band were very open-minded. They're from jazz-ish backgrounds, but also were composers and songwriters, and just kind of totally blew up my mind of conceptions of music. And so it was really great to connect with them, but also something that started happening, which I'm like literally just kind of processing now in the last year or so, is like I started gender questioning around the time that band was formed. We started playing, and jazz is where I was mostly working, aside from commissions here and there, in a performing sense. Jazz is where I was working. Incredibly hostile towards queer people, incredibly misogynistic, transphobic. There's very little room for people who are not straight cis men. So, and that's a thing when you think you're a straight cis man, like I did. You don't notice until you start, going to the other side, I had this kind of, I was very closeted in all of, whether it was like, playing with, creative jazz music in Chicago, or if it was like, or like gigging, like jobbing, like weddings, stuff like that. Super closeted. And so Iverson was a chance to like play music where I could wear whatever on stage. So I just like cover myself in like glittery makeup and like wear like a really tight dress that looked ridiculous, and like and just like try that. And like at the time I was like, oh, this is fun and exciting, but I didn't realize how like formative that was, and how much that I was using that as so much of an outlet for figuring that out, and how it was actually, I am kind of putting together, I'm kind of, you know, being forced out of jazz. You know, it's like, unless I really want to fight for a place there, being out is a very uncomfortable position that I just, you know, don't really want to deal with a lot of standard, you know, people in the field. And so, I mean, like, I don't want to, it's hard to deal with enough just like in the world. So, yeah, so long story short, I really care about this band and this project and the music in it. The band itself has, the last couple tracks that were released, it's a new lineup, and the band is from that new lineup, like kind of newly queer. We like have like a like tongue in cheek that we're, like Iverson has come out, but like, you know, like the existing members of Iverson have come out as, you know, in different ways, and the new member is a queer person. So it just dramatically shifted from being like ostensibly like 5 straight dudes playing like synth rock to like a very queer, like small setup that's been really helpful, I think, for all of us in expression. So yeah, so that's Iverson. It's in short, it's a synth pop band, and are releasing music sporadically as fast as possible. But it's a huge labor of love. This track specifically, The Void Within, is really exciting in kind of the collaborative aspect of it. So 3 members of the band, Charles Iverson, Joey Meland, and myself. Charles wrote the song. I wrote string parts for all of it. Joey produced it. Our really good friend, Maeve Feinberg, who's one of the members of the Spectral Quartet, plays strings, all of the strings. And so it sounds like there's an orchestra. It's literally just Maeve recorded in Joey's bedroom with this microphone here. And all the cello and bass parts are just pitched down. And so that was wonderful. And then it's also featuring this artist, Diane Coffey, who's fabulous, genderqueer bending just artist out of Indiana, of all places. Just tremendous performer, just myriad like backgrounds. Performs at Jesus Christ Superstar at the Lyric Opera here in Chicago. Was a voice actor in Disney's Kim Possible series. Been in a bunch of, I think, a couple like horror movies. Just kind of all was a drummer in an iteration of the band Foxygen, which is a really big name indie band in the States. Incredible. So Sean Fleming, stage name Diane Coffey, provided this beautiful vocal arrangement to the piece. So that's all of it. Yeah.
So cool. I mean, that's fascinating. I mean, where everybody is kind of drawn from. I mean, first of all, my main thought is like, that's the power of synth pop, is to make and turn everybody queer. But I mean, case in point is Iverson. But whether you wanted it or not, if you're into synth pop, that's what happens. But it's also so great to hear. I like that. I didn't actually put 2 and 2 together that Maeve was playing on that as well, and that I didn't know Diane Coffey. So this is a great find as well.
Yeah, they're amazing. Yeah, we love them.
Phenomenal. Yeah, very, very cool. And so this track specifically just recently came out, right? It's only
it came out. Like between when we first started talking about this is August 6th. So like.
Oh, okay. Yeah, only a few weeks ago. Yeah, well, that's great. So let's have a listen to The Void Within. It's funny that you play in all these different avenues, because I find it's something I do all the time because it's so freeing, and you can get so like blocked into a corner with one version of things. And I work in like a pretty like classically world sometimes, and it's so, I don't know, sad sometimes. You get really like boxed into like a really both ideologically and I guess literally, like, conservative world of whatever that is, in a conservatory world, conservatory world.
Yeah.
And it's so important for me to be able to play all these other things. Because it, like, keeps my sanity, and I can go and play in whatever band and do something that's great. But it also, I think people don't realize how much it informs everything else you're doing. And I don't think people really realize how much, like, listening to synth pop, like, affects classical music, and how you can, like, change as, like, I'm a conductor primarily, like, how I change as a conductor when I'm listening or playing in other groups. And it's so important. And I wish I could just tell every, like, classical musician who only plays in an orchestra, like, just go play in a punk band for a while. Like,
for
like,
sure.
go play in a ska band. It's really important.
I remember just having this realization. I mean, it's not everybody, but I remember meeting so many great, like, string players and just, chamber musicians in college, and, realizing that, like, they rarely listen to classical music for enjoyment. They listen to, like, all sorts of, different stuff. And, and it's definitely helped, you seeing them now, they have so many more opportunities because of it. 'Cause they're not, boxed into only being able to do one amazing and expansive thing, but, like, there's only so much room for it, unfortunately, and it's really, whenever any music gets super institutionalized, as classical music has been for a long time, it lives in, like, this interesting box of, like, when you're at the university, you see it everywhere and you see all these opportunities and things like that, and then when you leave, it's like, oh, the world is so much bigger, and the classical side of things is still just as big as what I was seeing before, so
I one of the things I also, every time, and it usually comes out when we're talking about, like, repertoire or whatever, but when you talk to an orchestra about playing Beethoven, and maybe we can stop playing Beethoven.
Sure.
That no one is trying to, like, remove Beethoven from existence. Like, the argument is, I think what is often so viscerally felt by people in like, a purely classical world is that, by saying we should do concerts that also include, female and feminine people, and identifying people, and, like, queer people, and BIPOC people. And it's not that I'm saying Beethoven shouldn't exist anymore. It's just, like, there are all of these other things.
Such crazy fragility to think that, come to that conclusion, and so many people do, there's so much sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia in the different circles, and it sucks, because, like, there are very few people who I have met that are, like, experience Beethoven and interact with the music and are like, fuck Beethoven, like, everybody, like, a lot of people, they might not be their main thing, but, like, I feel like I've come to very few people who, like, are trying to erase Beethoven, there has to be a more equitable future for composers. Jesus, like, it's honestly, it's 2021.
My argument is always also, like, if we're only playing Beethoven, and we're only playing Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, a little Bach, and it's appealing to whatever a percentage of a city that it's appealing to, so affluent, straight, white, heterosexual, maybe that's 40% on the high end of a population of an entire city, and then there's probably 20% of those people who have the money to go to the orchestra, and then 5% who actually do.
Yeah.
Well, what if we played music by the other 60% of the people who are in the city?
Absolutely.
Maybe they could also go to the orchestra, and we can stop saying classical music is dead, and we just can start saying maybe cis dead white men classical music is dead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's just such a huge strain of, like, this dying, white supremacist patriarchal thing, that's just, it's it's hanging on for dear life, and I mean at the same time suppressing and ruining the lives of many people. But also like it. If it seems pathetic, like that's why I say hanging on for dear life, because it's like, who are you? The way I feel about it now is like, who are you kidding yourself? Like when you like beef up the importance of these composers in the scope of everything, know. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Preaching to the choir, but maybe as a good segue, somebody who is not doing that, and has a wonderful idea of what music should and can be, is Sophian Stevens. And so you have this like really wonderful arrangement of Arnica by Sophian. And for those people who are not maybe familiar with Sophian Stevens, Sophian is a I guess we'll say singer-songwriter, but like a multi-instrumentalist and a writer and a composer and a poet, and just writes the most ethereal, ephemeral, beautiful things, and kind of wanders through genres as well, and has many albums at this point of really groundbreaking music and really beautiful lyrics that are associated with everything. And you did this wonderful arrangement. So can you tell us a bit about this one? Yeah, absolutely.
So was approached by Spectral Quartet, who just dream group. They're amazing people. To do like a cover for them. So they have this long running project of different composers writing, they call it, covers, like arrangements of songs. A lot of them kind of they're like kind of like B-sides or whatever. They're not like your most obvious choices of tunes. Sufjan is a pretty famous artist, and there are string quartet arrangements of a lot of his works. And he's worked with like incredible crossovers songwriters, and chamber music composers, Gabriel Kahane and Nico Muli, like people involved, and so I feel like I wanted to arrange something of Sufjan's, but like had to like come up with a little bit of a more maybe niche. It's like a more something a little bit, dig into the discography a little bit more, to come up with something special for the quartet, so they don't feel like, oh, here's another Sufjan Stevens arrangement.
Right. It's Chicago, yeah,
for sure. And so I picked this tune Arnica, which is just super haunting and super just kind of like on the subject of like giving up, essentially. And there's all this kind of stop-start motion in it. I imagine Sufjan, that's just, part into the music of what the lyric is. And yeah, I've loved that piece for a while, and just kind of dug into like, how would this work for a string quartet in a way that would be interesting and really capture that recording of the piece, because I couldn't find for the life of me of a live performance of it. I don't know if it's ever been performed live. I couldn't really find an interview about it that he's given. It really just, the composition itself exists in this recording. So I was trying to do justice to that. If anybody's interested in checking it out and comparing notes, it's on a long EP called All Delighted People, the second to last track on there. So just dug into very kind of like, tactile, like just textures in there. A lot of like these like you can hear almost like a creaking chair kind of thing, which might also morbidly be like a noose like moving, that kind of sound. There's a lot of like just kind of like a buzzing and meandering on various guitars on it. And so Spectral is amazing as new music ensemble, but like, specifically like they're like they have better time than like anybody I know in any genre, and it's fucked up, and it scares me, and I don't know how they do it, literally. And so I really dug into that, amazing skill of theirs to like really specifically place all of these meanderings that are very much improvised in the recording, but I was able to like really place them rhythmically in the score. And dig into different, timbres, and I don't know if I'd call them extended techniques, but like, just like into the instruments to grab similar timbres and do it justice.
Yeah, I mean, I just watched it. I agree with you. I don't think it would, I don't know if they're like extended techniques, but like all the like sautiers and the like ricochets and all the like, all like so close to being an extended technique.
Yeah, that kind of
very,
thing.
Used in a different way for sure, and
sure.
Accessing a different sonic kind of like timbre world, absolutely. But it's funny you say that they are incredibly tight. They are like an incredibly tight quartet.
Insane, yeah, it's scary to me.
Yeah,
nightmares about it. Yeah,
it is. It's like unnerving sometimes when you like encounter these groups. I don't know. Do you know Alarm Will Sound as a group?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Also, stupid tight. Just like very uncomfortably good at what they're doing.
Yeah. No. Anybody who can do that kind of thing, I'm just it's really scary. Like I don't. I wish I understood how to do it. I'd try and do it myself.
Well, on that note, let's listen to Arnica. the recording just came out in August. Yeah, or at least that video that you sent.
Yeah, so it was recorded at the Harris Theater in Chicago. So they did a really great virtual performance where they really professionally shot 5 or 6 different works at the Harris Theater, and had all the composers talk beforehand, and then strung it all together, and had a Zoom kind of live component of the whole thing. So it was like as connected and well done of like a virtual performance as you can do, in the time of COVID. So that happened in March of this year, 2021, and then just kind of released it on YouTube kind of separately as a thing outside of the Harris Theater website. So that's exciting to be able to share.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's nice to be able to finally hear it, because again, when we were talking about it, it hadn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And so it was nice to actually put past conversation to actually listen to. It was good to hear. What do you have next? You have commissions on the go? You have recording? What's happening?
Yeah. So let's see.
Things you're able to talk about.
Things I'm able to talk about. Yeah. My mind is blank right now. I mean, essentially, diving into more work with Iverson, so you can expect more releases in the future. We have actually plans to record something with Spectral Quartet, which will be amazing. We got to perform this arrangement once before in Chicago, so we're actually finally making that happen. So that'll be great. And then let's see, all of that work in the UK, all of those recordings should be trickled out over the next year or so, released under the moniker Baldassar, which is the artist Carl Baldassar. So you'll hear a lot of orchestral writing. There's I think 40 arrangements in total. I think it's across like 7 albums or something like that. It's just a crazy passion project, but it's awesome. Really excited to be part of that. There'll be a live video from that's coming out, and yeah, just seeing what live performance looks like in the future. We're just starting to tread into that water too. So Iverson and little gigs here and there, but yeah, I think that's all I know on the horizon. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're all figuring out what the future looks like, but it's pandemic timelines, I suppose. But what are we? We're in August. If you talked to us last August, what we thought the world was going to look like, or what performance would look like, or whatever, it's an entirely different story. So, I tend to be a positivist. So at least I'm
absolutely.
That, it looks really different. Hopefully, it's good different.
Have to be. And if there's anybody out there who would need strings arranged or needs their arrangements recorded, we have this microphone in Maeve and Joey's bedroom. We're actually starting a small production company and doing some of that. So I'm we are for hire.
Yeah, as you should be. A group of incredibly talented people doing wonderful arrangements for things. Yeah, you should be for hire, and people should absolutely hire you to do those things. Well, that's exciting. That's good. I always love hearing new production companies. This is great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Gene, for being here, and thank you for walking us through those 3 pieces and telling us about your work. And
no, it's so fabulous to catch up. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed Jacob's interview with Gene. Sadly, due to scheduling conflicts, I couldn't attend. However, I over the past few years listened to a lot of Gene's music and played it on my radio show. I just wanted to add that I'm always amazed at their ability to mix classical, jazz and rock music, and I look forward to hearing more from them in the near future. So that's all for this episode. You've been listening to the Classical Queer Podcast, and Jake and I look forward to being with you next month. The incidental music is courtesy of Jared Miller, and the show was produced by Samantha Jane.